psychologist.
Yeah,
Siri
techniques are the evasion and resistance techniques that we teach our own troops how to resist against interrogations. And he was sent to Iraq and told to teach interrogators how to use these as torture weapons, and he refused to do so. So the change, I think, has come from people within the military who have stood up and said, no, this is against American principles.
Were you subjected to Siri techniques? I mean, did you go through that training?
I did go through Siri training, and I remember this moment, I'll never forget, at the end of Siri training.
Where were you?
I was in Spokane, Washington. It was very cold. It was the first week of February, sub-zero temperatures. And it's very challenging training. You know, it's a prisoner of war environment. And at the end of the training, I remember we stood in formation, and we were very exhausted. They played the national anthem, and afterwards an instructor gave a speech, and he told us about how some American prisoners of war in Korea had been tortured to death and refused to give up information. And I remember taking great pride in the fact that our country did not torture, that we did not resort to such practices. And that's why I've felt such an obligation to write this book and to get the word out that we've got to return to that. We've got to return to a place where we do not conduct torture in any organization within our government.
The issue of torture has raged in the Association of Psychologists, the American Psychological Association, and psychologist participation. Did you work with psychologists?
We had psychologists. They did not advise on the tactics or techniques that we should be using for interrogation. They actually were there for the safety of the detainees, to ensure that if someone, one of the detainees, started to experience problems mentally, that we could identify that and get them the appropriate help.
Who do you believe should be held accountable?
I can't make judgments about accountability. I mean, I'm a soldier, and ultimately my job is to fix and make better our processes that help us defend our nation. You know, the accountability finger for torture, I think, you know, it is a leadership issue. I think we set examples from the top down, and our troops follow those. But at the same time, I think all the troops do have training to know what's right and wrong. Do
you think prosecution of those who cross the line would help people understand what's right and wrong?
I would say that if it was an interrogator who had crossed the line, they certainly would be prosecuted.
If it was an official?
If they crossed the line and broke the law, yes, I think they should be held accountable.
Do you think that should go right on up to President Bush?
I think it should go to anybody who breaks the law. I don't think the law, I think the history of the United States has proven you know, that we impeach and try anybody who breaks the law. It's not really for me to decide who has broken the law or who hasn't. What I know is that we've got to change the system to do a better job of interrogating.
I want to ask about Eric Holder, the man President-elect Barack Obama has asked to be Attorney General, have confirmed he would become the first African-American to lead the Justice Department. Holder served as Deputy Attorney General in the Clinton administration and as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. He served as an advisor to Obama's campaign on legal issues and served on his vice presidential selection team. This is some of what Eric Holder had to say Monday after Obama officially introduced him as his pick for Attorney General.
I also look forward to working with the men and women of the Department of Justice to revitalize the department's efforts in those areas where the department has unique capabilities and responsibilities in keeping our people safe, in ensuring fairness, and in protecting our environment. This president-elect and the team you see before you are prepared to meet the challenges that we will confront. But from my experience at the Department of Justice, I know that we cannot be successful if we act alone. We must never forget that in many ways those in state and local law enforcement are our first line of detection and protection against those from foreign shores who would do us harm. We will need to interact with our state and local partners in new, innovative ways to help them solve the other issues that they confront on a daily basis. National security concerns are not defined only by the challenges created by terrorists abroad, but also by criminals in our midst, whether they be criminals located on the street or in a boardroom.
Scott Horton, the pick of Eric Holder as Attorney General, and what he's just said.
Well, of course, he's inheriting a Justice Department that is at its all-time low point in public esteem. So he'll have an immense job ahead of him. He had a reputation while he worked at the Justice Department as a person who wanted to keep out of politics and keep out of the headlines, do his job, follow the book, follow the rules. I think he was very, very well regarded by his colleagues at the Justice Department. But of course, he brings a little bit of negative baggage, particularly in connection with the pardon of Mark Rich. I'm sure he's going to get embarrassing questions about that.
And Mark Rich was the man that President Clinton pardoned.
After receiving campaign support from the Rich family.
And Eric Holder was in charge at the time in vetting the pardons.
That's right. And I think it was revealed in the last 48 hours that his role was considerably greater than the public knew previously. Also, in private practice, he was involved with Chiquita Banana and some dealings in Latin America that I think are a little bit unsavory, but that's right. But I think, private attorneys don't always get to pick all their clients. So I think he'll be forgiven on that. On these issues relating to torture in Guantanamo, 2002, he was supportive of the administration's position on establishing Guantanamo, but within 2 to 3 years, he turned quite critical of it and gave a speech at the American Constitution Society, which I personally witnessed, in which he spoke in extraordinarily impassioned tones about the deterioration of our legal regime and our respect for the rule of law that Guantanamo had come to represent. So I think he stands exactly where Barack Obama stands on those issues, and I think I have no doubt about his commitment to shut down Guantanamo and to bring an end to the torture policies. I think he's really clear on all of that.
Unlike Barack Obama, Eric Holder is opposed to the death penalty. What influence do you think that would have?
Well, I think the Attorney General gives recommendations in connection with clemency and pardons, and I think we can see some of that. I think the Bush administration had ratcheted up, had taken an extremely aggressive position on administration of the death penalty, had stripped away discretion from U.S. attorneys on it. In fact, we have one U.S. attorney in Arizona removed because of his objection to policy positions. I expect to see that reversed now.
He was also part of the legal team that worked to reauthorize the USA Patriot Act.
That's correct. And I think but I think there he showed traditional law enforcement community biases for a broader mandate. Eric Holder is, I think, closer to the civil libertarians than any of the Bush attorneys general, but he's not a civil libertarian by any stretch of the imagination.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Matthew Alexander, his book, just out this week, would have been out earlier. He had trouble getting it out of the Pentagon. The vetting process, How to Break a Terrorist, the U.S. interrogators who use brains, not brutality, to take down the deadliest man in Iraq. And Scott Horton, his latest piece in Harpers is called Justice After Bush, Prosecuting an Outlaw Administration. And that does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Berkshire, Fotokadu, Sarah Mate, Angela Kamat, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Honey Massoud, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curry's our engineer. Special thanks also to Becca Staley, Nick Illa, Hugh Gran, Angie Kiefer, Samantha Chambly, Julie Crosby, Jaisal Noor, John Randolph, Jose Miranda, Travis Collins, Vesta Godars. I'll be headed to Sweden